welcome to another episode of To My Younger Self,
the #1 support network for students and graduates.
made by young people for young people.
It's Alicia here.
And it's your girl Praise.
And today we are joined by Liz.
Yay! Glad to be here, y'all.
Thank you so much for coming and joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is
Literally. So Liz is a director at Microsoft, but we're going to get you to explain a bit more about what you do and your role. And you're also like a family friend of mine as well, who's mentored and coached me for years. So I'm very excited to have you here. But yeah, literally, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having
How do you
me.
feel? How do you
Yeah.
feel?
You know, I'm super excited to have this conversation. I think it's so important for us to, candidly talk about,
Definitely.
how we help young people
Yeah.
get better, because at the end of the day, you all are the future, right?
Aw, that's so cute.
exactly that.
Yeah.
Very true.
No, thank you so much.
So anything that I can share, I'm happy to.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
appreciate that.
So, at the beginning of every episode, we start with our segment, which is called Vibe of the Week. So,
Ooh.
it's
Yeah, I
essentially
know.
you telling us, it could be a book, a movie, a film, a drink you've had, a place you've been to, a country you've traveled to, a restaurant, like any recommendation that you'd recommend to someone to try. Like, what's been your vibe of the week?
Ooh.
I know.
Oh, loads.
One of us can go first.
Do you want me to go first? What do you think?
Huh?
Do you want me to go
Yeah,
first? What do you
please
think
go
about
for it.
Okay, so mine this week is conveniently here on the coffee table. It's this book called Girls That Invest, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, by Simran Kaur. I've actually not finished it yet. I'm about halfway through it. But I just think it's really good because I wanted to get into investing, which is what I messaged Liz about earlier this week and some of my other mentors. And I feel like this spoke to me when it was on the shelf, just like the pink cover. And it's really good. She talks about like how women have always been put off from investing and like might be scared about going into investing as another way of making money. And like the reasoning behind it is because it was only in the 1970s that a woman could even open a bank by herself without her father or her husband. And if you think about it, that is really recent. That's not that long ago. And it's quite empowering. And then she like explains certain things like what ETFs are and all these kind of financial jargon. So I think it's a really good book. So I recommend this one for the listeners.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because in some countries that actually still happens where girls can
It's
do
true.
stuff without their male counterparts.
Yeah, it's insane. It's all over the world. It's still a thing. Yeah, we're very fortunate to be here. Actually, very fortunate. Yeah.
I
You
know
go.
my vibe.
Yeah, you go for your vibe.
So my vibe of the week is picking up a hobby. So this week I submitted like my membership to my hockey club like for the next year, like this next upcoming year. And that for me like helped me because it's like an all-round membership, so you can do tennis, you can do, and is it paddle? Like it's a new
it's a new
paddle.
thing.
I want to
Yeah.
try that. Everybody's trying paddle.
And obviously hockey, which is like what I primarily play. But I was like, I'm happy that I put myself forward to continue that on. So I really appreciate having like external things outside of my studies to like get involved in and do. And I'd recommend anyone to do like anything. It could be knitting, like just any extracurricular really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one. And it's so important, right, to keep active.
Exactly.
So, like in hockey and any other sport for that matter.
Especially like some lifestyles are so sedentary with work.
Correct.
Sedentary. What does that mean? I have not heard that.
Like,
Where you're just
sitting.
sitting, moving.
Word of the week.
Word of the
Word of the week.
But no, so that's why I think it's really important to have something that you can come away from.
I quite like that as well because I feel like I always had loads of hobbies growing up as a kid. Like I did like slam poetry, art, acting, running, everything. And I feel like as you get older, it's sad, but you lose those hobbies, especially like GCSEs, A-levels. I did nothing apart from reading books and studying. So, yeah.
Well, as you grow older, priorities change, but it's always important to make sure that some form of activity is part in there, physical activity, because it's really good for your mental health and your physical health as well. So
definitely,
you know, whatever that evolves to be is really good to make sure there's some kind of physical activity in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, it's my turn.
That's your vibe of the week.
Okay, so I'll actually talk about two vibes.
Yeah.
So originally I'm from Guyana, which is culturally Caribbean, and I absolutely love my Caribbean food.
Yeah.
So my vibe was taken some of my team who's never had Caribbean food to a Trinidadian restaurant in the middle of Brixton, Fish Wings and Things.
Nice.
And they were absolutely.
What was the name of the restaurant?
Fish Wings and Things. It's in Brixton Market.
Yeah.
Lovely Trinidadian restaurant. Food is amazing. Nice. Highly recommended.
Yeah. We'll have to go there.
Yeah,
yes, we're definitely gonna have to go there. Yeah. Like I said, the folks that I took there, they've never been into that community and much less have the food. So it was really, really engaging to share that part of me with some of my colleagues. So that was my vibe. One of my vibe. My other vibe is in my working life. I do a lot of mentoring at work.
Yeah, you do.
And I had the pleasure of welcoming a new staff member to my team. It's a young Black gentleman, and I was super excited because in the world of tech there's not many of us. True. Whenever I get an opportunity to welcome younger talent is super important and exciting for me. So that was one of my other vibes.
That's really nice.
Two great vibes.
On the topic of Caribbean food as well, you introduced me to Cottons.
Yes.
It's Battersea, isn't it?
There it is in Vauxhall.
Vauxhall, yeah. So funnily enough, I actually took a group of my friends as well from LSE who had never tried Caribbean food before to Cottons, and they absolutely loved it.
Yeah, definitely another nice hidden Caribbean gem.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, if you wouldn't mind, could you just tell us a little bit, just a brief sort of account of your journey, your career journey, how you got to where you are now?
Wow, that's a long time without aging myself. So I'm still 20. No, just kidding. So I actually started in technology when I got out of university, and after a few years of working, I did not go to university for technology. My degree is in operations and purchasing, which is more of a production plant operation type career. However, I was working for Pepsi at the time in the customer service department, answering phones, taking orders, all that good stuff. And I happened to be the youngest one in the team that understood how the printer worked, how to get stuff rebooted and stuff like that. So naturally, I got into technology that way. And at the time, there was now, they now started the internet boom. So everything was becoming web, and people were asking, how do you do websites? And I sort of learned that on my own because I figure, this is becoming, quite popular. And then this is in the 90s, I'm old. So as we were approaching year 2000, people were getting really nervous. What's going to happen in year 2000? And at that time, you only had to spell computer for somebody to hire you. So I went to self-certified and some Microsoft certifications. I started with networking, and I did a little bit of work with network administration. And then I moved into databases where I was doing database administration and database coding. Wow. And I also went into software development. And I did all of this self-trained and self-learned. I started my own consulting firm at the time where I hired other talent like myself and do projects. And that was really awesome. Got to work on some really cool projects like Gulfstream, the private jet.
That's really cool.
So I got to work with that company and many other companies, the state of Georgia in the U.S. I helped them with tracking kids in the foster care system.
Wow,
so we
that's
created
really
a
cool.
program to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So really interesting program. And then I decided, hey, I like people.
Yeah.
So I became a project manager, and then I got certified by Project Management Institute, which is like the premier project management certification at the time. I think it still is today. And that's how I started into my career. Couple of years into having my company, I decided to sell that off.
Yeah.
And I went to work for Deloitte and Touche, which is a big 5 firm,
Yeah.
consulting firm. So I was a manager there, where I led several project managers doing these large implementation of some sort of technology or the other into big enterprise companies. And I stayed there for about 5-ish years, somewhere there. And then I went to work for Microsoft 14 years ago in New York.
You started in the New York office?
Started in New
Wow.
York. I was a
Exciting.
program manager there, doing the same thing, doing large implementations.
Yeah.
I did one for Dell, where we helped Dell improve their manufacturing systems around the world. And then I came to the UK for about, I would say about 16 months at that time for a large project. And at that time, I met my ex-husband, who I met in Jamaica, but he was British. And he ended up getting married, and then we moved to Singapore.
Wow.
For 6 years. Actually, I take that back. 1 year I lived in Malaysia and 5 years in Singapore.
Okay.
So same area, Southeast Asia.
Did you know that my mum is part Malaysian?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've not been there yet.
Yeah.
Though, but that's
so
really
it's
cool.
amazing. Yeah. So coming back from Singapore, I came back to the US. Got a divorce in the process, unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it. And then I been in the UK. This is my 7th year.
Wow.
So all this time I was with Microsoft for the last 14 years. Started in New York, lived in Singapore, now in the UK.
That is so exciting. Honestly, when I hear that, it just kind of fills me with excitement and like hope for the future.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I mean, I just love when I hear people's career journeys, and it's not just like one thing that they did from start to end, but like you've tried out a bit of everything. You've lived in different countries, you've managed different teams, different projects. It's just very exciting.
And it makes you feel more comfortable with like accepting that things will change, or like be more willing to try new things as well.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Look, one of the things that I always tell my mentees, and I think I told you, is travel, right?
Yes.
The biggest
You don't need to tell me twice.
I love traveling,
So anytime you have the opportunity to travel, especially if you work for a company where you have that opportunity to travel, take it with both hands, especially if you don't have, firm ties like a family or kids and things like that keeping you back.
Yeah.
Be a sponge, soak up the world. It's a massive world out there, and the amount of life experiences that you would learn from just traveling, you would never ever get it.
So true.
So
I was gonna ask you, what do you think is like the biggest benefit of traveling?
For me, it's just opening my eyes to the world and learning that it's not just me. There's a big old world out there, and the diversity, right? And I think the biggest thing that it taught me is tolerance, right? So there's so many different kinds of people in the world, and learning those different cultures and having that tolerance, right? If everybody had that opportunity to do that, we wouldn't have crazy things that's happening today, right? So for me, it's just learning about different people and culture.
I have 2 questions. Yes. Hopefully I don't forget them. First would be, okay, I'll do the first one second. But do you feel like what you were speaking about in terms of like going to different countries, meeting different people, that tolerance has helped you in your role?
Yes, it absolutely did. So many of my role involves leading people from all over the globe, right? And leading somebody, let's say in Jamaica, is different than leading somebody in the US, is different than leading somebody in India from, let's say, Japan. Culturally, people do business differently, people act differently, and being able to understand that and understand that commonality and still energizing people to do their best work is what it helped me to do, right? And to be successful at.
You know, even just on my internship, I picked that up because I had a project with a German manager and just noticing the difference in the work ethic of Germans versus British. I was
very different.
Just very, very different.
Yes.
So even just on that level.
Exactly. And just being able to have that mindset of, look, if it's different, doesn't mean it's wrong or right. It's just different, right?
Exactly.
And there's things that you could pick up and take it on board for your own self, and there are things that you just say, okay, that's just the way it is, and we can still work together although we have differences, right? So
And my second question, obviously you mentioned traveling, has probably most likely some of those been solo traveling?
Some of them, a lot of it is solo traveling, especially when I travel for work. So yes.
Because the reason I bring that up is, so I start working at my law firm next March. And so I've just done a year of my, something called the SQE and my master's. And between now and then I have months off to travel. And something that I've tried to get my dad in particular more on board with is the concept of solo traveling, which has taken a bit of groveling, and I'll get there eventually, but I feel like it will be very beneficial, but I understand the dangers of it as well. But what's your experience been like?
So I absolutely have been lucky because I've been traveling from a small age. Like, growing up, we've always went some other country on holiday or something like that. So I did not have that fear of traveling. However, your dad is probably right. There's an ugly world out there as well, right? So, like any country or any city, you gotta be smart about it, right?
Street smart.
But that shouldn't stop you from exploring the world by yourself. Because to your point, it does bring on an element of learning about yourself that you wouldn't get otherwise.
That's
but
very true.
It's just like just in London, right? You can hang out in London, you still gotta pop your wits about you and your smartness about you, right? So
that's really true. I wanted to ask you more about the way that you worked your way up, because obviously you spoke a lot about how you're in positions now where you manage teams. Like, what is that like as well, managing different teams and having that sort of power and responsibility? But also, how did you get to that point in the first place?
Very good question. Well, I consider myself a people person, right? I treat people the way that I like to be treated.
That's good.
And I think that's very important in business, because I feel like you're only as good as your team, right? And at Microsoft, we have fundamental, how do I say, concepts and beliefs and principles around core values around leadership and management. One of them is, how do you generate energy, right? How do you create clarity, right? And how do you get your team to deliver results, right? And the way that we do that is through a concept called model, coach, care, right? So you model what good look like, right? You continuous coaching, right? Whether you're being coached yourself, because it's a continuous learning, or you're coaching your team to be better. And then last is all about caring for your people, right? I believe fundamentally, when you care for people, they bring their best selves.
Yeah, that's true.
And the numbers come.
Yeah.
Right? So I think I really took those values and to heart, and that's how I live my day-to-day leadership life, if you will.
Yeah.
So it started from there. And as a project manager, also, although those resources weren't my direct resources, I treated them the same way as if they were my direct resources. And, word got around that they experienced a good time when they're on my project. And it shows, right? Because I deliver results. Because people were happy to come on the gravy train, and I always make it fun, right?
Have like team building exercises, and
there's
dinners
always
and
a fun time with it
that's
when you. So I think being a people person, being your authentic self, is very key, and that's been, I would say, the key to my success. The other thing is being humble to take on feedback and have that personal growth, right? You don't always get it right, and that's okay, right? It's okay to learn, have that growth mindset to make it better and better and better version of yourself every day. So
that's good.
I think those two things are really important. I know that for at least our demographic, we would have lots of listeners who are at least at university. We both took on roles in like clubs and societies. And even when I was in sixth form, like I ran the African Caribbean Society. But like even leadership in those ways, like you carry that on throughout life, or you might find yourself in positions like that continuously throughout life. And I wanted to ask, how do you feel like, what has been the most difficult part of leadership and how have you managed that?
So for me, the most difficult part in any leadership role is having to let people go. Right? Whether it's performance based or whether it's just a workforce reduction because of the business changes direction or whatever the case may be. That's always the most difficult conversation for me. But the way that I handle it is just being honest and being empathetic, right? And listening, right? And offering whatever help that I possibly can. But it's always difficult when you have to tell somebody that this is the end of the road for them in that particular role.
That's got to be tricky to do that. I think your question as well touched on something important in terms of like you can pick up those leadership roles, like for our younger listeners, quite early on in terms of society involvement and stuff. And I feel like that helps you to stand out. Because I was going to ask you as well. I mean, I imagine you do a lot of hiring and like looking through people's CVs, seeing whether they should come onto your project or your team in the first place. What would stand out to you? Like, how do you stand out in such a competitive, sort of saturated market?
That's a very, very good point. For me, I look for things like, what have you led? Right? What is your success rate is, right? How do you learn? How do you, get creative and innovative to, get to the outcome that you look for? And sometimes it's hard to pick that up from a 1-page, 2-page CV.
Definitely.
But, for me, talk about things like what you've led. Make sure that's on your CV. If you could put in things like the scope, like how large is it? Is it a $2 million project, or you led 5 people, or those kinds of things, right?
I mean that's something I didn't know as well. Putting in the figures and measurements.
Yeah,
is really important
absolutely.
as well.
That's very important, because what that does, it tells the initial thinking is, okay, this person is at least capable of doing that, and they would want to know more, right? So your CV should always be telling that story that would keep people guessing and want to know more, right? So
that's a good way to put it. Definitely. Definitely.
Very interesting.
Oh, so another question I wanted to ask you about is if your interest ever changed at any point in your career. So I know at first you did something that wasn't tech related in terms of your undergraduate degree, and then you went into tech.
Correct.
Is there any point where you wanted to step away from that? Have you had any points where you thought you might change career paths?
Honestly, no. And I think because the tech industry is so dynamic, so you're constantly learning something new.
Yeah.
It makes it so interesting. Yeah. And I think being a leader, you get to sort of channel into different areas. Like, for instance, one point you'll do sales, one point you'll do marketing, some point you're going to do some kind of business development, right? So there's so many different areas in the tech industry. Even the tech itself, right? It could be networking, it could be AI. AI is the future, right? That's brand new. We all need to learn that, right? It could be about data, it could be security, right? Never use hearing people get hacked all the time. So there's so many areas that you never get bored.
Yeah. I feel like that leads really well into our next topic, or next sort of segment, I guess. What we wanted to do was have a semi-crash course, but just sort of breaking down and explaining these jargon, because I feel like, especially with tech as well, because I feel like tech is such a lucrative industry to get into, and I always said to my brother that he should have like gone down the computer science route, but it is very intimidating, like head on, all the terminology. Similar with finance as well, like that definitely put me off at first as well. So even like you've just mentioned, like AI, like what is AI for people that don't know? Like what are those like basics that you need to know for coming into tech?
Right. So that's a very good question. Look, I think any career is like that. Like when I think about medicine.
Right? Literally.
That puts me
even
off.
Law as well.
Law.
Reading.
By the way, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh, really?
If I had to do it again, I'll be a lawyer. If I liked reading. Reading was a thing that put me off a lot. But no, it's like any industry that you go in, there's always going to be that jargon dictionary, if you will, and you'll learn it with time. So there's in my opinion, there's no set things that you need to learn. Yes, understand what's the latest. Understand a little bit about what AI is, right? Understand a little bit about what cloud computing is. So whatever is the new thing that's in the marketplace, a basic 100 level, and this is stuff you can just Google and find. YouTube, look up a YouTube video or a TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but I'm sure there's content like that.
It's actually quite good because with TikTok it like explains like quite difficult concepts quite quickly.
So these are things that you can quickly spend some time, especially if you're going for an interview. Spend some time and just say, what's the latest jargons that I need to know? Simple things like that, right? So that's how I would approach it, and it's different and it changes. So don't try to memorize it at all.
You have to understand.
Just understand the concept and learn and build on that learning. I could tell you, in a field like technology is a continuous learning process, because it changes all the time, and you always want to be on the forefront of that change to remain relevant.
Even with AI, like the definition. So I did an essay for my master's on it, and there isn't a set definition on like what artificial intelligence is. Like there are different definitions for it, but there isn't a set one. So I think it does come into like research and development. And touching on that, do you feel like, especially within your role, you have to continuously develop and research and learn more?
Absolutely. Every day, all day. So at Microsoft, we have a culture of what we call growth mindset. And the concept is for us to always stay curious. Because that's how, if you think about the progression of technology, right? If you don't learn build on this thing that you have, it would never progress. And I guess if you think about it, it might be the same for most industry, right? If you don't keep learning how to build a car, you're not going to get the next latest car, right?
True.
But in technology, it's in your DNA, right? You have to learn, to learn in order to succeed in that industry.
I feel like that links to not to keep talking about LSE because I need to get a new personality now, but I feel like it links to LSE's motto, which is understanding the causes of things, because it really is about having that mentality to be curious. And also I feel like if I was talking to like my younger self as well, I would say not to be afraid, like when you're in a conversation and words are being thrown around that you don't know, because it can be like, exactly, ask questions, because it can be so uncomfortable, you know, when you're in that setting and people are just throwing around terminology and you're like, what is going on? But like, actually don't be afraid to ask, because I actually feel like I mean, it'd be interesting to hear your perspective, but it would be nice to hear a younger person asking these questions because it shows a curiosity as well.
Yeah, and I could honestly tell you, any adult will be very, very eager to pause and explain, right? So don't be shy about it. It's all it shows character, right? It shows that you're curious, you want to learn, you're inquisitive about, a topic or about life. So ask, go in. 99.9% of the time, that adult will be willing to help and explain and break things down.
Yeah, definitely.
And just final question on this for me. Do you feel like you've always had that growth mindset?
Yes. I've always been curious. I've always been that kid. So growing up, I would say I've always been the one that take things apart and try to figure out how it works and put it back. When I got out of high school, I wanted to do engineering, and I went to engineering school.
Oh wow, I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, I went to the engineering school for the first year, and it was way too hard.
Is difficult, very difficult.
It
very
was
mathematical.
And I love maths, but it was just so intense. And such a young age. You talk about what I'll tell my earlier self would be to stick it out, but different conversation. But, at that time I was the first, leaving my home country, going to the US, first time out of my parents' house in my own flat. And I didn't want to be bothered about having to study that hard. And at that time, if I'm honest, I didn't really understand the value of going to high brand or high prestigious type school like LSE, and then the engineering school that I went to was one of the top engineering schools in the US, and I didn't recognize the value of that, so I started saying
but I think in terms of what you said about the prestigious school, I feel like what's actually been a very common theme, I don't know if you'd agree, Praise, in our episodes, is that you don't actually, obviously it's helpful, but you don't actually need to go to a prestigious school to go into these massive brands like Microsoft, because most of our guests that we've had haven't actually gone to like a Russell Group university, and one thing that me and Praise notice is there's so many students at LSE right now that are either like haven't found employment or are at a much smaller brand, and like there's people at non-Russell Groups that I know that are at bigger brands, so like it really is about your personal drive. And
that is 100% true, right? Look, you'll even start seeing some jobs at Microsoft don't even require a degree.
Wow, that's really good that they're doing
so
that.
We're starting to shift in that. And the other thing that we do at Microsoft that is super, and that I'm proud of, is apprenticeships. Right? So you don't have to go through the traditional university to start that career, right? So there's loads of apprenticeships opportunities available. We have interns where I just had an intern. I can't remember what school he went to. He was in my team for a whole year, and at the end of that we offer him a job, right? So then he goes back for a year, really, and then come back. There's a job waiting for him, and that's amazing to me, right? So don't feel like there's one path.
Definitely.
There's always different ways to accomplish that end goal. The idea is just having a goal in mind, or you don't even have to be 100% clear, right? Exactly. It could just be a shell. And as you navigate and you figure out and you learn about yourself, that can change.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. I know you said earlier about if you were speaking to your younger self, you would have stuck it out and followed, like, continued. And it comes on to a conversation we wanted to have with you on doing what you love versus what makes money. Yeah. And the reason why is because obviously we both went to LSC, and there the culture is very oriented around money and going straight into a career that makes you the most money, not really thinking necessarily about what you actually want to do, but just following that path because of the pressure around you and the urge to seriously want to make money quickly. Versus feelings of thinking about maybe this might not actually be the career path you want to follow, but doing what you love instead. And we just wanted to know, what do you think about that?
That's a tricky one. Personally, I think you always need to be authentic to yourself, because if you're not loving what you're doing, you're not going to be good with it. And I don't care how much money you think you're going to make. If you're not good at it, you're not going to make money. Yeah. You know, I tell people all the time, yes, everybody wants to jump into the tech industry because there's this perception that you make money. And you can. I mean, there's loads of careers in the tech industry that would allow you to make money. However, it's not easy, right? It's like any job. You gotta love it in order to be good at it. Yeah. And if you're not good, you're not gonna make money because you're not gonna succeed, and you're gonna be frustrated. And so I always tell people, be your authentic self and follow what you love to do. I mean, look, some people like playing football, right? Some people, they make money. Some people like music, that make money. But then it's not always about money. Yes, of course, you want to be able to live comfortable, your family and things like that. But follow your own internal aspirations, because that's the only thing that's going to drive passion. And once you have passion, you'll succeed.
I agree, and I also feel like you have to have that drive anyway, because one thing that I've noticed is even if you're doing something that you love, you can easily fall out of love with it if you're doing it all the time. Because even like with video editing, for me, with YouTube, it gets to the point where it's long. Like, no matter how much I enjoy doing it, you'll have a headache. You might not want to do it anymore. Similar, like one of my cousins, she does running. And I know at times she hates doing that because, athletes, they have to train day in, day out and put the hours in. So I feel like if you don't have that drive, even if you're doing something that you love that's not necessarily money driven, you will still struggle.
Yeah, look, like anything, right? You're gonna have low points and high points, right? So it's all about balance, right? Even if you're making money, even if you're the best attorney out there, right? You're gonna find parts of it where you get a case that's like, I don't want to deal with it. Yeah. But you have to take the highs with the lows, right? Yeah. And you need to understand the concept of balance. Take time out, right? Reset, right? Yeah. Because doing something repetitively all the time, I don't care what it is, whether you like it or not. Yeah. You're going to burn out. So you got to be able to manage that burnout.
Yeah. I think as well, like just fitting in with this theme, like a piece of advice is to sort of be flexible with your interest and in terms of like where your career goes. Yeah. Because I'm even just thinking back to my own journey and how I ended up even finding out about economics. And it's because my business teacher knew that I really liked the subject and she gave me a book to read. It was called Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner? And it was about... it's so random.
Who's Adam Smith? No.
Come on, guys. Come on. So it was about like... the women sort of behind these like leading economists and leading inventors and thinkers. Which, I mean, it kind of fits in with this as well. Clearly you can tell I'm like an ultra feminist.
Well, what they say, behind every good man is a woman, but
Exactly.
hey, I digress.
That's basically what the book was about as well. So that's what got me interested into economics. Then I did it at A level. Then I went on to do it at uni, and I didn't like it as much at uni as well, to be honest. And then consulting, I stumbled across that through like either through mentors or through like insight events that I was going to. It's not something it's not even something I knew was a thing before coming to uni. Consulting, yeah. But it's like, I like consulting as well because it allows you to be flexible, because you get to do different projects in loads of different industries. So you're not just like set in one industry when you're a junior. Right. So yeah, I think just like being flexible and open is like really important at.
Oh, absolutely. And again, when you're at this age, it's just like I was saying earlier about traveling, right? This is the age that you want to soak it up, because this is the age you get to figure out what you like or what you don't like, because you're learning about yourself as well, right? So absolutely try different things. Definitely. And, back to that balance we were talking about, maybe you like to go play paddleball, right? Take some time out and go play paddleball. Change it up a little bit, and then refresh and come back, right? So it's all about how you balance your life.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think has helped you the most in balancing your life?
Ooh,
good question.
That's a very good question. I like to travel.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough to be consulting in a consulting career for years, where I travel literally every week, Monday to Thursday, religiously. And while in the beginning people may go like, oh, that's so glamorous, you get to go here and there, it's really not, because all you do is go from one conference room to the airport to another conference room. Maybe you go out for dinner, a hotel room. And that can get old. But for me, I embraced that, because every city that I went to, I learned something new about that city. So to me, that kept it dynamic, And it's just for my like you were asking me about my passion about learning. I've always had that passion about learning. So whether it's learning about a new city, a museum, I like the spa. I'm finding a new spa.
You just came back from a spa break.
And the other thing that I absolutely like to do is eat. I'm a absolute foodie.
I love trying food
in different countries. I love going to different cities and trying food.
Same,
right?
Same.
So what? And that's about learning yourself. What is it that you like? You might like to play tennis in different courts. You might, whatever it is, you might like to go shopping at different malls in different city, whatever it is, right? So it's all about learning yourself and giving yourself that grace to sort of relax and regroup.
Yeah. On that topic of learning, I was wondering if you would mind breaking down like a few sort of beginner concepts in finance. For like, the reason I say this is because I didn't know like what a savings account was, what interest rates was, any of those kind of things when I was younger. And I feel like sometimes the reason why is because if you're not taught those concepts by your parents, they don't teach you about it at school, you won't learn until you're actually much older. And I feel like it's so important. So even just like on a basic front, like a savings account and like compound interest.
Look, you touch on a good point, because I can honestly tell you, I didn't know about it either, right? Like, I didn't grow up in a household that we don't talk about money. It's just one of those things you just don't talk about. There's big people conversation. You don't get into that, right? And then as you grow up, you kind of learn it by baptism, as they say. What's important is this concept of having to pay for stuff, right? And you have to have money to pay for stuff. And I think the first thing that you should learn is the ability to budget, right?
Yeah.
And as part of that budget, there should be a line item with your name on it, which is your savings,
Yeah.
right? So you always pay
Pay
yourself,
like a tax,
right?
yeah.
Like a tax, right?
Yeah.
And you put that into a bank account. Start small. Open a little bank account. It may have, I don't know, 3% interest or something like that. And that's fine. So the interest, the way it depends on how the bank is calculated, is that money that they give you over time for keeping your money in the bank. Because if you think about how a bank works, they take your money and your friend's money and your mom and your pop money, all the money, and sort of use that money, reinvest it to make money. So when people, sort of want their money back, they have the money to give it back to you. So those little concept is the basic fundamentals. So you earn interest in a small saving accounts, but then you could do bigger things as you grow your saving pot, right? Maybe you grow it to, I don't know, let's say you grow it to £2,000 and you take that £2,000 and say, okay, I'm going to put it into ISA, right? Which is deposit where you can't touch it for X amount of time. Perhaps it's like you can't touch it for like 2 years, but you get a higher interest rate on it, right? So these are the kinds of little tips and bits that you can go.
I think that's good. I think another good phrase that we learned in like A-level economics that stuck with me to explain what interest is that it's a reward for saving, cost for spending. I just feel like that is like really just a simple way to like explain what it is.
I've never heard that, but that's exactly, that is spot on, right? A reward for savings. And while at the typical bank, you don't necessarily get a whole big amount of interest rate, but you do, right? And the whole idea is saving. You always want to be in a position where you're saving for rainy days, because you never know what's going to happen when you need that extra fund.
Even just like saving for traveling, like
correct, saving for traveling,
for yeah, definitely. And I like this idea of, I mean, this is what I did as well, which helped me, of like paying yourself first. So like whenever I get money, I'll just calculate the percentage that I'm able to save, whether it's 50% of what I got or even if it's 10%, and just like putting that as a tax, and it's like building a habit. So I can't remember. I read a book. I can't remember how many days it takes to form a habit, but it's
21 days, 3 weeks.
Yeah. So if you do that, so often, then it will become a habit and it'll be a lot easier.
It is, and it takes practice. And look, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not the world's best saver to this day. However, it's a necessary evil, right? As you get older, you have to, because if you don't, you'll find yourself in a position where you won't be able to help yourself, and it'll be a burden on people around you, and it just goes downhill from there. So just get into the habit. Just put a little bit aside, and you'll be fine.
There's your hidden gems of this episode.
So now we'd like to move on to another segment, which we have blind ranking countries. So as you've mentioned, you're a frequent traveller. And so how it works, do you want to explain the concept?
Yeah, of course. So the concept is that we're going to throw a name of a country at you, and you have to rank it from 1 to 5. So for example, I could say France, but you don't know the next countries that's going to come up. So you might put France as number 1, and then I might say Jamaica, and you might be like, oh, damn it. I should not have put that at number 1. So 1 being the best, 5 being the worst.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, praise when you're ready.
Ooh, the pressure.
Okay, perfect. So, the first country that we have on the list is China.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I really want to go there.
5.
Whoa!
As in for worst?
Well, you said 1 to 5.
You're gonna...
No, fair enough.
You said 1 to 5.
Fair enough, okay.
Wait, why did you put it at 5?
Yeah, I'm interested.
Because there's better countries that I've been to that are 5 better.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a great country, don't get me wrong. It's fabulous.
Next up, I have for you Barbados.
Ooh.
The Caribbean.
3.
Oh, nice.
Okay, perfect. Next up, I have, as you mentioned before, Singapore.
Oh my. 4.
Okay, and then I have Switzerland.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know, right?
I knew that from that face I was wrong.
That was wrong. Okay, I guess 2.
And then, well, do you want to give a random country?
Another one?
Yeah. We
We
know where it's going.
Oh, yeah. Jamaica, then.
Oh, well, okay, that's easy. Number 1.
Where, out of interest, where would you say your favourite country that you've travelled
My
to is?
favorite city in the entire world as of now is Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh, I really want to go to South Africa. I really want
Cape
to.
Town, South Africa is
I'm gonna write that down
absolutely
for my
my
bucket list.
favorite city in the world. It's just aesthetically beautiful. The people are awesome. The food is amazing. The wine to die
Oh,
for.
yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what? I didn't like wine until I went to Italy. Like, I hated it. And when I had it there in Milan, it was so good.
Oh,
So
yeah.
be missing
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I just wanted to say as well, for the listeners that might not have the means to travel, because definitely when I was growing up in my family, we never travelled at all.
Yeah.
The first time I travelled, which you'll know, was for my uncle's funeral in Jamaica when my dad took me away, which was in year 10, so quite grown at this point.
Yeah.
Is that I know when you're younger, it seems like, I don't know, like I used to compare myself to other families that would travel a lot. It's a bit disheartening, but just know that like life can get better 100%, because I never would have expected to have travelled this much at uni. Like that's where my travelling really started, uni. There's a lot of like free programs out there for students to travel, like check out with your university. There's also like, I'll even just plug it now, there's a conference called Business Today, which any student can apply for, which means you can go to New York for free. So like take
New
advantage
York,
of
New
those
York.
programs and like apply for extra funding, scholarships, bursaries, use that money to travel.
And I think even with that, like traveling doesn't need to be outside of a country. For you to
I was
enjoy
about
it.
to say the United Kingdom is an amazing place. I actually just came back from Belfast and I
how was
was
that?
absolutely in love with the place.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing. I love Scotland as well.
there's some
Edinburgh
really
is
beautiful
really beautiful.
Edinburgh's so nice.
Yes.
Yeah, Edinburgh's really nice.
Cornwall is stunning.
Yeah.
You know, so there's some really, really beautiful places right here in the United Kingdom that
100%.
Explore.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, well, I think that was a great episode. Thank you so much,
You're
Liz.
so welcome.
Thank you for
You
coming.
are
We've
so
had a great
welcome.
time with you and learnt so much.
Yeah,
Yes, this was great. Thank
100%.
you.
Thank
Yay.
you.
So we actually finish off all our episodes with asking our guests.
Yes, how could
what
we
is
forget?
one thing,
Oh, gosh.
one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
How could we actually forget that?
Younger you was listening now.
That's poor from us.
That's a very good question. I would say fail fast and learn more. Right? Because sometimes when you're younger, you're so scared to fail.
Yeah.
And when you fail and you reflect on that failure, that's when you learn the most.
Yeah.
So fail fast and learn.
I like that. I really like these like pieces of advice that we're getting at the end of
It's like
each
collecting
episode.
them all together.
It's so nice.
So helpful.
But yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is please, whatever platform you're listening to this on, please follow us, subscribe, rate the episode, because it will really help us in terms of our growth and the type of guests that we can bring onto the pod. We need to keep reminding people to do that because we'll forget, because we're just having these awesome conversations. But yeah, please do. It will massively help us out as we're growing on this journey, and thank you for being here with us.
Aww.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening. It's been your girl Praise.
And it's been Alicia.
And
Lizette, Liz.
and we will see you next week with another episode.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you, ladies.